Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know the Premier can be hard to reach, but he should know that his numbers and talking points on healthcare funding are several years out of date. I'll retable this chart from the other day, which is based on the government's own budget and annual reports. On March 6th, the Premier stated on the record that Manitobans would see an additional $300 million over what the NDP spent on healthcare. That number changed this past Monday to $414 million and today to $400. None of which are accurate, Madam Speaker. Since the NDP left government in 2016, Manitoba has only seen a one-year increase of $289 million. Of that, $184 million, or 64%, came from federal increases to the Canada Health Transfer, meaning this government has only increased health spending by $105 million 3 years ago. Does the Premier know the difference between budgeted and actuals, or does he and his staff need to brush up on their basic math?
The Honourable First Minister.
Happy birthday to the member, Madam Speaker, and I hope he'll consider the rebate for election expenses that we have offered him as an early birthday present, and show gratitude to the taxpayers of Manitoba for that support that his party will receive. I would remind him that he is on record as supporting larger subsidies, higher business taxes, and higher personal taxes. And I would encourage him to go to the doors and make sure everyone else knows that that's what he wants as well.
Here. The Honourable Leader of the Second Opposition on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We do need to be clear on healthcare funding. In 2008, as an MP, the Premier voted to change Canada's healthcare funding formula away from one based on need. Alberta received $1 billion more a year, but every other province, including Manitoba, got less. In 2011, the Harper Conservatives refused to negotiate and unilaterally changed the funding formula for healthcare from 6% to 3% a year. As I've told this Minister of Health and the Premier on multiple occasions, I disagree with it. But the Premier is doing what he always does. He plays the victim when he's the one doing the cutting. This government's own budget figures shows the federal share of healthcare funding in Manitoba has been going up every year, and it is now 22.76%, not below 18% as he has mistakenly claimed. The Premier has said we do not need a government that will make up numbers and then pretend it's involved in healthcare while its participation declines. I couldn't agree more, Madam Speaker. Will the Premier admit what everyone knows is true, that his government is cutting healthcare even as federal transfers go up?
You're gonna need it now.
The Honourable First Minister.
While the member chooses to stand with his federal cousins who won't support the rule of law in our country, Madam Speaker, he also chooses to stand with his federal cousins who won't support sustainable health care funding. Yeah. And that is unfortunate. While he puts partisanship and his federal cousins as his top priority, Madam Speaker, apart from more office space, he is actually mistaken in his priorities. We are not. We will stand with Manitobans for a sustainable healthcare partnership between federal and provincial government, and we will continue to do that because we believe that a sustainable healthcare system is the top priority for Manitobans and for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Second Opposition on a final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, a few weeks ago the Minister of Health tabled a very illegible chart, which I'll quote with his description, quote, a helpful graph that shows healthcare spending has been up every year under this PC government, every year, up, end quote. Actual spending has been cuts, since costs are rising. Madam Speaker, our chart, which we supplied, has the actual numbers according to this government's own reports. In the first budget year of this government, 2016-17, put together by the former NDP government, they spent $6,546 million on health, $40 million over budget. According to our current fiscal year's quarterly report, health spending for 2018-19 will be $6,533 million, $13 million less than this government spent in their first year working with an NDP budget. This year's budget numbers aren't credible since, for the past 2 years, this government has underspent what they promised by $438 million.
The member's time has expired. The Honourable First Minister.
The federal Liberals, when Paul Martin was Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, committed to for partnering with the provinces and said they would maintain the funding for healthcare at 25% of budgeted amount. In Manitoba, it's now below 19% and sinking. It will be a net loss to Manitoba because of the Trudeau government's decisions over the next 10 years of over $2 billion, and the member sides with the Trudeau government. And Madam Speaker, we side with Manitobans for sustainable.
Paul Martin.